parents, I didn't get into any of the good schools in India. No IITs, no NITs. I failed college. Then I got suspended from the university. People would come tell me, "Hey,
Mhm.
Aditya, I will work for Fountain or I'll work for Misho." Now,
Mhm.
imagine like you give me same amount of money and Misho gives me same amount of money. Is number one is the mission and the goal of what, like, why you exist as an organization and why you exist as an individual.
Hi, no student coming from India to the US starts a business, but he did. Ever wondered how could someone take interviews on Twitter Space? He did that too. Here are his 3 mistakes lessons. Number 1, make mistakes earlier. Number 2, make mistakes earlier. And number 3, make mistakes earlier. There's so much more to uncover. Today we have with us the founder and CEO of Fountane, Mr. Aditya Siripragada. All you have to do is relax and enjoy the podcast. Hi Aditya, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, hey Barkatul, thanks for having me, man. Appreciate that.
Yeah, so Aditya, let's start by talking about Fountain first. What inspired you to start Fountain? Please tell us the story around that.
Yeah, so I was originally born and brought up in Hyderabad in India until the age of 17. My parents, I didn't get into any of the good schools in India. No IITs, no NITs. My
Mhm.
parents said, "Look, you're not a good student to begin with. So you have to go abroad if you want to. I mean, fortunately, they could afford that, and they sent me to the US for undergraduation. So at the age of 17, I left with 2 bags to the US. And when I did leave, I was obviously when you're a 17-year-old, uh, you are a little bit like confused, and you're instant like the what you think the world is not what it is, right? And
Right.
I was optimizing for getting drunk, partying, and like being with girls. Like it's a very like misconstrued system of
Pink World.
why, yeah, why I wanted it. So I failed college. Then I got suspended from the university.
Okay.
That was a very tough time for me. I was just 18 then, and actually my visa got terminated as well, and my university got terminated. Like my undergrad got terminated as well. So the big thing was, I wanted to just find a way to go back to the US and make a life there. So
Mhm.
I found a way to write a petition to my school's academic dean, and I said, look, I'm from pretty middle class family, and the hopes and dreams of like who I am is like reflective of, around my community. And if I'm a like if I don't come back and do this, then it's not just I'm a failure, my community is also a failure, my family is a failure. So they gave me one more chance. I came back to the US, and I got good grades, but then I got rejected from all jobs and internships because I didn't have a good GPA. Then I said, like, look, this makes no sense at all. I have
Mhm.
3 more years in the US. Let me see what I can do on my own, where the outcome is in my favor, right? Like where if I struggle, then I can control my end victory. And for me, starting a business was the only thing that made sense at that point. And everybody around me said like, that's so stupid, why are you starting a business? Like no student coming to the US starts a business. You actually can't do that. Then I did my research and said like, there's actually nothing that's stopping you as an immigrant to start a business in the US. So I started a business, and the initial premise was simple. There's this concept called lean startup methodology. it's
Mhm.
uh, it's more around the lines of how do you create a minimum viable product, enough where in the next 90 days or 150 day spectrum, uh, hypothesize a problem understand like the consequences and quickly build something that solves a customer pain point and build from there. This concept now is very popular. Back in
Mm-hmm.
2017, when we started our business, it was still popular in the West Coast, in the Silicon Valley, where I went to school, Minneapolis, Minnesota. It was not very popular.
Mm-hmm.
So we started an agency to help local founders in the Minneapolis region develop quick MVPs and cheap MVPs. We built a team out in Hyderabad, and we used obviously outsourced services to get the cost of building minimum viable products more affordable. And we
Mm-hmm.
were one of the first agencies in the Minneapolis, Minnesota region to do that. And we got some good traction. We helped a company go to Y Combinator, a company go to Techstars in a span of 90 days. And slowly we kind of emerged from there, and now we do a lot more things than just that.
Interesting, very inspiring story. Like, if I'm not wrong, a few months before you had a lot of fellows through Twitter Space or somewhere, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So,
So good.
what was the thought process behind that? Like hiring in public through Twitter Space or something like that?
So long story short, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I run a bootstrapped company, and I mean we're primarily into services, but then we also have a ventures business where we do some investments, and we have our own portfolio of early stage tech companies. But we're now venture backed. We just reinvest our own profits yearly, and in the COVID time, you know, with the whole VC boom and the amount of people that were getting crazy offers. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I've tweeted it today too, but I've seen one after the other. One of our developers just leave to VC backed companies that were giving much better offers. I mean, it's just like if we paid 18 lakhs, they paid like
Mm-hmm.
40 lakhs. So there's
Right.
no way to compete. So overnight, I just lost my entire team. So my whole thing was that people would come tell me, "Hey
Mm-hmm.
Aditya, I will work for Fountain or I'll work for Misho." Now imagine like you give me same amount of money and Misho gives me same amount of money. Today I go to like some other company called Dosho. They
Mm-hmm.
look at like the profile and they'll say like ये Fountain का company के लिए तो काम क्या किया versus
Mm-hmm.
they'll say Misho के लिए काम किया, right? So the brand impact was like
Right.
significant. So then I understood the psyche of how why brand is important. So I started I said, okay, cool, sounds good. I need to work on our brand, which I
Mm-hmm.
just started to tell our story, saying like, look, uh, obviously environment changed. Now it's not the
Right.
same environment as before. Interest rates have significantly gone up. Salaries have come down a little bit. Massive
Mm-hmm.
layoffs, but we don't do all that. We're a bootstrap company. We're very stably growing, and we don't fire anybody, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I just started talking about all that on Twitter, and I said like, look, our company is growing significantly, and we're going to hire a bunch of people. And let me do one for you. I'll hire everybody from Twitter, and I publicly started posting every job profile and also their salaries and the benefits one after the other.
Yeah.
And I was like dropping jobs sneaker sneaker companies drop like shoes, right? So and we got thousands of applications, really quality applications as well. But that was for senior devs. And then a lot of these the Gen Z, intern crowd, college student crowd, they were, I mean, hundreds of DMs, message after message, comment after comment,
Mm-hmm.
retweet, saying like, hey, आप interns कब कर रहे हो? When are you doing interns? Like, we were really waiting for internships. And I said, internships are like a one-way street. Like, our senior devs need to invest in you. But then
Mm-hmm.
them happen to be quality interns as well. So I said, like, look, let's do something interesting here that's never been done before. Let me hire interns, but I'll do 100% of the hiring only through Twitter,
Mm-hmm.
and all the interviews will only be done on Twitter Spaces. And that tweet has gone viral. It got hundreds of thousands of likes, reposts. Like it was controversial. People
Yeah.
got involved. Like there's a whole comment war, and I said why are you guys taking this seriously?
Mm-hmm.
We as an employer don't have a problem, The guys that want the employment don't have a problem. Who are all these other people to have a problem?
Right.
And then I said, now I'm going to definitely do it, because like until now it was a joke. But now,
Mhm.
because all these like random people are getting like, they random people are making comments, and they're saying like, I'm treating these people as if like they're use and throw material. Now I'm going
Mhm.
to actually do it and show you that this is going to work. So I made an open challenge that like we're going to make it happen. I created a very lengthy type form. It takes 20 minutes to complete this type form. I created a very lengthy type form intentionally to see how
Mhm.
many people apply. And then I said, like, guys, like, we are hiring for like seven, interns, and this is like your type form. And one question after the other question, how many people filled out just in 24 hours? 550 people filled out in 24 hours. A form that took 20 minutes. There was a video that you had to shoot, and there's like custom answers that you had to fill out, a voice message that you had to fill out. It took on an average 20 minutes. 550 people filled those out. Now, we said, wow, like this is, I thought like we'll get like 50 or 60 responses. We got like overwhelming 550. So in 24 hours, we said like, let's stop this. Then
Mhm.
what we started to do is like, we went one profile after the other. We went and like, we looked at their GitHubs. We looked at their like, Dribble or like Behance profiles for designers. And we said, actually, like 100 to 150 of these are really quality. There's like a lot
Mhm.
of good quality in here. But we don't have the bandwidth to interview 150 people. What
Right.
we'll do is take 70 or 80 profiles that we really like,
Mhm.
right? We do batches of Twitter Spaces interviews, and we'll get our senior fellow, like our head of design, head of dev involved, and then we'll do one interview after the other interview. And I basically tweeted out a schedule of spaces where I said like, anybody's welcome. You
Mhm.
guys can and listen to this. And we told the contestants like, look, you're gonna like be live with your video camera on Google Meets, and then you're gonna have your mic on Twitter Spaces, and then whoever will come and listen is gonna come and listen. We'll give you 8 minutes. Not a single person is gonna get like 1 second more than 8 minutes.
Mhm.
You have just 8 minutes to showcase yourself, and be concise, be clear. Everybody said yes, let's do it. So
Mhm.
we interviewed 70 candidates live on Twitter Spaces. We got around 500,000 views across the entire interview series, 100,000 live listeners, right? And majority of those listeners, 20 to 30,000 of them were STE interviews on day one itself. Like I think at one point we had 10,000 live listeners, on 8,000 to 9,000 live listeners on one of the spaces. And we had not just like interns, we had junior senior developers, we had founders, we had VCs in India ecosystem. We had basically like everybody come and join saying like kya ho raha hai.
Yeah.
And then I got a lot of like messages later on. Like I got messages from my like Tanay Pratap, one of my friends. Like a lot of these guys like have texted me saying like, look, you've done a good job. This is, I thought this was a joke, this was a circus play, but the way
Okay.
that you organized this is definitely like very commendable. And we meant it. Today the we didn't hire 7 people, we hired 10 people.
Okay.
And it's the best intern class of Fountain in the 6 years of our intern classes. It's when I say the best, it's as good as my HT1 class of previous generations. Some of them have left like they had 2 lakhs rupees worth of offers. They didn't take that. They took the 50,000 rupees offers that we had. So overwhelmingly a very 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 good class of interns, and I'm proud of the way that we've handled it, and I'm proud of the candidates as well.
Yeah. Even I was also watching what was going on, like क्या हो रहा है ये, कुछ मतलब समझ नहीं आ रहा है, थोड़ा देखते हो तो I was among the 100,000 live watch.
Yeah, you were. I think the first one, like we had 8,000 live listeners on the first one.
Yeah. So let's talk about some mistakes you have made. We all made many mistakes, but what are some of the biggest mistakes you have made as an entrepreneur? Like
You,
and yeah,
yeah, no, go ahead, complete your question too.
yeah, and how do you stay motivated in spite of them? Like, is there any incident you want to share with us?
The way that I look at it is like mistakes are. are a part of the learning process, and it's a pretty, like, everybody talks about it. Everybody talks about it, right? Like, I look at it as, I look at everything in a very, like, objective manner, right? That's
Okay.
my thinking. Think
Mm-hmm.
about the time when you're starting to ride a bicycle, when you're very little, right? Like, you're riding a bicycle, and how do you learn it without making a mistake? You're going to fall down. When we,
Right.
like, learned how to the cycle, like, when we were little, we're falling down, like, but then we'd get up and then we'd start riding it again. We'd get up and we'd start riding it again, right? Like,
Right.
that's the same thing. At the end of the day, anything in life is the same thing, right? Like, you kind of
Mm.
fall down. When you fall down, are you getting up or not is the only thing that matters. And when I say, like, the whole idea of mistake is like that whole falling down and getting up process is like what counts and what matters. Would
Mm-hmm.
I, like, would it be nice if I didn't fall down? Yes, it would be nice. Like, even when you're little, like, you were scared of falling down, but
Right.
then you got, right? Even here, like, I would like to not make those mistakes, but am I glad I made those mistakes? I'm glad. So I wouldn't change anything about the mistakes that I've made, because
Mm.
you can make mistakes intentionally, you can make mistakes unintentionally. When you know in your own head, you're aware that this is a mistake, right? Like doing
Right.
something. Then if you
Right.
do that, it's on you. However, unintentional mistakes, like, for example, you're trying to ride that bicycle, and
Mm-hmm.
whatever, like, you're going too fast and then you fall down. You're going too slow and you're falling down. You don't know how to balance, like, without the two, like, tires on the you don't supporting tires you don't have. You're
Mm-hmm.
falling down. That's all okay. That's a part of the process.
Right.
So I honestly, there are a lot of things that, like, I would not do. There are specific consequences that I can talk about. I wish I didn't do that, but I'm glad I did those. I made the mistakes earlier on.
Mm.
Everyone makes these mistakes, and I just made it early.
Right.
So change anything about the mistakes.
That's a great point. That's really a great point. So, I think a lot of entrepreneurs can relate. Even everyone can relate uh, to making mistakes along the way, right? And like, what are your advice for the entrepreneurs? Uh, let's see, in a normal life, everyone makes mistakes, right? But if you are building a company and you are making some mistakes, apart from you, many of your employees will get affected from that, right? So, what are your advice for them?
So, the mistakes that you make, the people that get affected by it around
Right.
you, I think this starts from a deep sense of purpose more
Mm-hmm.
than anything, and about a deep sense of integrity. These two words.
Okay.
There is a
Okay.
word called purpose and a word called integrity. Let me explain what that means, right? Like, when the people around you
Mm-hmm.
start to understand that you, as an individual that are driving the ship, right, are a human being,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think the biggest thing that we tell our team is that we are humans.
Right.
Me and my partner, we are humans before we are anything.
Mm-hmm.
And more importantly, we're imperfect human beings. And everybody, human, the word itself is imperfect, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there shouldn't be that expectation that humans will always drive perfect results.
Mm-hmm.
Humans are imperfect by nature. But again,
Right.
where is that imperfection or that mistake coming from? Is that
Hmm.
coming from a sense of selfishness, or is that coming from a sense of experimentation? Right? Now, where the purpose and the integrity piece comes in is, number one is the mission and the goal of what, like, why you exist as an organization and why you exist as an individual. When that is very clear to your team and the
Mm-hmm.
people around and the people that get affected by you, right? Number one.
Mm-hmm.
And number
Right.
two, your deep sense of integrity and oneness, and knowing that like what's more important is the organization, not you, is also clear to the one and everyone around you, then people are very forgiving. People understand that you are a human being. So those values need to be inculcated in your team, number one.
Mm-hmm.
Number two is that like that needs to be made very clear that like you are a human being. And like at the end of the day, I think reciprocity, there is enough reciprocity between you and your teammates when you have that bond. And my like my teammates and most of our employee base understands that
Mm-hmm.
not just our employee base, even my family understands that like, look, we are trying to do our best here. We take decisions based on all the information that is available to us. We are not impulsive. We are rational, pragmatic, long term decision makers. And mistakes to hota hai, like it's a part of it, and like they get affected by it, we understand that. But again, like it's done with a deep sense of purpose and integrity, and I think they are very forgiving, right? So again, human beings are forgiving, and as long as it's done with a sense of like in a sense, a sense of like a genuine like genuine experimentation for us, like in when it affects the team over the individual, then that's fine. Like as long as it is in good faith, the words are in good, people around you are forgiving. Don't do things with selfish interests as a leader. Like
Mm-hmm.
the moment you are focusing on yourself
Mm-hmm.
and people around you get affected, then there's no going back. You lost the trust. The day that you lost your trust, you're ousted as a leader. Like no, once there is no trust anymore, there's no team anymore. And when there's no team anymore, there's no results anymore. So as long as like your team trusts you, they're forgiving. They are very forgiving. So don't take the trust for granted at all, right? Like that's the only thing. And it's fine, like they get affected. It's a part of it. Like, and they're ready to get affected. That's a big thing. Like they are ready. Like who, I mean, in the process of building Apple, how many of like Steve Jobs' teammates got affected?
Right.
Team is a very, I mean, this guy, like Steve is a very, very erratic guy. Like
Mm-hmm.
she was impulsive, and he affected people around him. He was
Mm-hmm.
crazy. But Steve did that with a sense of purpose, with a sense of a greater goal. He was not selfish for his
Right.
own interest. There is a sense of goal, and people around him understood that, saying like Steve is doing it for a purpose, and we are sold on that purpose, and we are ready to get affected by it. So that needs to be very clearly communicated to your team, and your team needs to trust you, and vice versa too.
Yeah, that's a great point. So let's talk about some trends going out in the market. Like, what are some of the trends you are seeing in the tech industry? Specifically, talk about AI, ChatGPT, Bard, and something like that. And what challenges do you see facing entrepreneurs in the future as a result of these trends?
Look, here's something I'll say
Mm,
is that I write an AI newsletter myself for founders called Cave Minds, and we have over 5,000 founders that are subscribed. And the question that they always ask is like, hey, how is this going to impact me? Like, what's going to happen? Look,
mhm,
nothing is going to happen in the short term. Like, Bill Gates always says this, that humans always overestimate the changes that happen in 2 to 3 years and
mm,
underestimate changes that happen in 10 years, right? When these changes come along, or these like new fancy gadgets and toys come along, like the moment Tesla comes and everybody says, okay, like ho gaya, like oil and gas is like no longer alive. Then the
yeah.
moment ChatGPT comes, everybody says Google is dead. Look, we as human beings look at everything black and white. Like our nature is always black and white. Like
Yeah.
we'll look at something and we'll say like the death of something else. But look, transition always is a very gray. The scale is
Mm,
very gray in transition, right? So what I will say is like, don't get worried about trends. Okay, trends are the least thing that should bother you, because in 10 years it will have an impact, but it's not an
Mm-hmm.
overnight situation. Understands how this transformation is happening, understands what areas this transformation will happen, right? Like, for example, AI is like really what it is accessible use of large language models.
Right.
Now, not like AI in its form didn't exist before, right? Like, it did exist. However, the processing capacity has become exponentially cheaper and in an API format that is given to public in a very like easy to use format. That's what like GPT is, right? Like
Right.
GPT in its technology form existed before. It's just like the computation abilities weren't like that cheap. Like you couldn't like process that amount of like natural language, obviously. Now you're able to do that, and what that means to business, it's going to transformationally change, but it's not going to change overnight. So understand like what that means, what areas it's going to affect, what is like bullshit, what is like what is truth. All Twitter and everybody will say like all these industries going to die, all these
Yeah.
professions are going. Nothing will happen overnight. There will be a significant impact, however. Truly understand, like, inform yourself as an individual where changes may happen, what these technologies are, how long do you think these technologies are going to like exist. For one, no technology has a moat here, and I think like Google's like internal report also showed that like nothing has a moat. LLMs by
Mm-hmm.
nature are going to be like open source, they're going to be available on GitHub, and they it's going to be a part of every technology. Every cloud provider, AWS, GCP, are going to have LLMs on the top of it, and it's just going to be a new way how backend functions, right? Like you'll be able to retrieve a lot of like useful data like easier, a lot of time is going to be saved. Generative AI is going to have an like definitely a big impact on like all professions, but what I will say is it won't have that overnight. So
Mm.
try to inform yourself, try to stay ahead of the curve, but nothing to be afraid of, right? Nothing should ever like make you fearful. What it should make you is excited, right? Sure,
Right.
be a little bit nervous because technology by nature makes you a little bit nervous, but be excited, be on the cutting edge, learn as much as possible, and that's it. Again, like, AI is not your competition. The human that
Mm.
knows AI is competition. So, like, anyways, it's not just AI, right? Like any tool and technology that a human knows. Like before, the guy that was like, typing on typewriter, suddenly like,
Mm-hmm.
Windows, like, computers came. The guy that was typing on the computer is obviously like, replacing the guy that's typing with the typewriter.
Yeah.
So this is not anything new. A guy to human being that knows technology is better than human being that doesn't know technology. Now it's like some form of AI. Tomorrow it's going to be some BI. Like, who cares? Like, at the end of the day, we create tools and technologies, and if you use it, you're better than the rest. If you don't use it, you're worse, and at some point you're going to be replaced. Today also some people are typing with typewriters. They're not
Right.
completely replaced, but obviously like the de facto is that you're typing with a computer. So
Mm.
it's not much different than a typewriter. But understand what this means. Understand that these changes take a very long time to truly be like part and parcel of day-to-day business, and then kind of like stay ahead of the curve. That's all I'll say.
Interesting. That's a very great point. Uh, let's conclude this with the last question. Like, as a founder, what three piece of advice you would like to give to aspiring entrepreneurs?
See, the three pieces of advice, like five things that I would do differently, I think those are usually very very good for like Twitter posts
Okay.
and like Instagram reels, right? Like,
Yeah.
obviously, there are not three things or
Okay.
five tools or seven hacks, right? Like, entrepreneur, it's not that. The number one rule of entrepreneurship is this is not for the faint hearted. If you think, oh, it's so glamorous, it's so lifestyle, look at this guy, he's having such a good life, you will get those things, but there's a significant amount of like pain that you have to go through to get those. And I mean, if I like, I mean, I've went through so much, and this is not the medium to like talk about like what I went through, and what I went through is very minimal when I compare it to like other entrepreneurs. The reason why we go through so much is because we have what's called as conviction and faith.
Hmm.
We have a deep sense of conviction that you know the what we believe about a certain market, about a certain customer profile, about a certain pain point is unsolved, and we are the ones to solve that. Number two is faith in ourselves, faith in the business, faith that tomorrow will be better,
Right.
right? So it's just like relentless optimism. It's like we are like we are a cockroach, like that will never die, right? Like a nuclear like war is happening, like cockroaches are like still immune to that.
Mm-hmm.
B is like we are just such optimists about tomorrow, and there's no, like, honestly, there's no magic formula. If you don't truly believe in the concept of conviction and being able to like have that deep sense of conviction. For example, like when Brian Chesky started Airbnb, you know, he had that deep sense of conviction in sharing economy,
Mm-hmm.
especially when it came to like hospitality. When one said like hey, like, look, a stranger is going to stay in another stranger's house, and like we're going to make money, you'll say like that's crazy, you're an idiot. But then there's that deep sense of conviction that like humans work that way. Like we host each other, how is that very
Mm-hmm.
different, making that a marketplace? There is that, like, he had, anybody can come tell him like you're crazy, and
Mm-hmm.
he wouldn't like change from his mission. Like he believed in that concept. He thought like that was like a no-brainer. And if you don't truly believe in in a, like, in a certain pain point, or in a certain concept, or a certain solution, or a certain future, you're not going to last the pain. Like it's just not like worth it. Like it's just, it's like the same thing, right? Like when you go to the gym, like the pain of like lifting weights, and then eventually like you're gonna get the body that you want. But like sustaining through the pain is the same thing. Like if anything, like, do you have what it takes to sustain through the pain? Why do you have that? Is because tomorrow you're seeing as a brighter tomorrow. And when you are a pragmatist, when you have all the facts, you know the truth, you can execute a certain industry, or a certain customer type, or a certain pain point better than everybody else in the market. It does not matter. Today is pain, tomorrow is pain, day after tomorrow is also pain, but the day after that, it's beautiful. There's nothing better than this. So
It's a
if
belief.
you pass the pain, it will be an unbelievable game. So yeah, that's the only thing I'll say with that.
Awesome. Awesome. That's one word I would like to say. Yeah. Thank you so much, Aditya, for joining us
Yeah,
today.
man.
I hope you liked this episode, and if you did, make sure to support us. So hit that subscribe button, like this video if you liked it, and get ready for more amazing podcasts that will make you listen, learn, and grow. Till then, this is Barkatul, and you are watching Next Big Thing. Bye bye.